Welcome to Bama Bugfest on the Web, a virtual event dedicated to the fascinating world of insects. Bama Bugfest on the Web is a collaborative event brought to you by UA Museums, the Mildred Westervelt Warner Transportation Museum, the Alabama Museum of Natural History, the Department of Research and Collections at the University of Alabama, UA's Rogers Library, and the Tuscaloosa Public Library. We are offering 9 total days of bug-themed content ending on July 25th. For a full schedule of events, you can visit the event website at bamabugfest.org. Well, my name is Rebecca Johnson, and I am the UA Museum's Communication Specialist. And today we are talking about water bugs. And specifically in this live stream, we'll be talking about Hellgramites. We have a full panel with us today, so I think the best way to get us started is go around and get to know everybody. So I'm very excited because we've got actor Justice Leak with us, who played Hellgrammite on the CW's Supergirl TV series. So thank you for joining us, Justice.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I didn't know if it would be disrespectful. I wore my DEO t-shirt. I don't know if you can see that.
How dare you?
Yes, Hellgrammite. I think the last time we saw Hellgrammite, he was taken into custody by the DEO. So I didn't want to be disrespectful, but I thought I would have to, support the good guys. But
the good guys are the ones who, take me in.
Yes. So, but thank you for joining us today, and thank you for being willing to come on and talk about your experience. So we'll get to Supergirl in a second. But also with us today is Dr. John Abbott, who is an entomologist and also the director of Museum Research and Collections at the University of Alabama. And John, thank you for coming on to talk to us about the real world Hellgramites that we can find out in nature.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
And we also have Eric Workman, owner of Show Enough Comics and comic book lover, to talk about the DC Comics character known as Hellgrammite. So this is the character from the comics who also shows up on the TV show. So thank you, Eric, for coming on to talk to us about that. Well, so I guess the first thing we could do is, Justice, I guess we'll start with you. Did you know anything about Hellgrammites or the comic book character of Hellgrammite before you signed on to join the show?
Not a thing. Not a single thing. I thought it was cool once I started doing some research, and in one of the comics I read, he's labeled as a super villain. I was like, oh, he's super. Okay, he's super. Then why haven't I ever heard of him? That kind of thing. It was actually funny. I was going to when I was cast in the role, and before I went out to California to shoot it, I went to they have Dragon Con in Atlanta.
Yeah, I go every year. Yeah.
Convention, right? I was like, perfect. I'll go in. I'm gonna find me some, research. I'm gonna find out where the supervillain is, right? And I found this guy. He had a setup, just comics everywhere. And I'm with a cousin of mine, and we're kind of looking around. And I feel kind of cool because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be in, a part of this universe, right? And so I asked the guy working, back there. I was like, do you? I started asking for a couple of specific episodes because I looked it up, or specific issues. I looked it up on my phone, and he was like, no, I don't have that one. He's like, what are you looking for? I was like, oh, well, maybe you can help me. I'm going to be playing a character in the show. And he's like, oh, really? Which one? I ruined the story. I told him Hellgrammite first, and he was like, Hellgrammite? Why would you want to read about Hellgrammite? And he goes on this rant in front of my cousin's dying laughing because I have to sit there and take it while he destroys this character in front of me. But it was funny. It is just the amount of humility I needed in that moment. But yeah, so I did some research. I got in the comic world, and when I Googled it, I was surprised that it was an actual creature, right? That it was an actual insect. I was like, oh, damn, that thing looks crazy.
Yeah, they are quite fun to look at. Eric, so I guess since we talked a little bit with Justice about the comic book iteration of the character that he did research on, could you tell people about Hellgrammite in the comics? Well, actually, Eric, can you still hear us? He may be having issues. in that case, we can come back to Eric whenever he's ready. So Justice, so when you got onto the show, what kind? If people haven't seen the Supergirl TV series, could you describe Hellgrammite to them? What is his story? What does he look like? What kind of things can he do? Could you just describe him for us?
Sure. I mean, in the show, he is an alien species that can actually replicate himself in these little like cocoons and modules. That's not. Oh, here we go. So when Kara Danvers, came to Earth at the beginning of the show, which she's Supergirl's cousin, they left, their planet at the same time, but her little ship got lost along the way, and so she was delayed coming to Earth, which is why Superman, her cousin, is older than her. And well, as Kara came down to Kara, shuttled down to Earth, she also brought with it a prison, a space prison, knocked it out of its orbit and brought it crashing down to Earth. And when that happened, all the convicts, all the alien bad guys, take off across the world. And I'm one of the first ones that they sort of come across. Now he's just a bug. He's just trying to eat. He looks a little more vicious than it, really is. And what happens is Kara's aunt, Astra, uses me to try to get to her. So he's used as sort of bait, and they like any insect, they sort of bait me by getting this chemical that I feed off of, put it on the back of a truck, and send it careening through town, knowing that it'll track me. And it actually was one of the coolest scenes I ever got to film, to be honest with you. It was at 3 o'clock in the morning. They had shut down the 3rd Street Bridge in Los Angeles. And the first 2 times they let my stunt double do it, who also happens to be my best friend. It also worked out really cool that way. Although I wanted him to do like a ton of stunts and things, because he's a bug. He can crawl up walls, jump off of things. And my buddy, he's a parkour guy, so he can do all of that. But then CBS, because the first season it was CBS was like, no, we got to play it safe. Let's have, we'll do that in CGI. And we're like, no. So we're on this bridge, 3rd Street Bridge. They have it, closed. And they have my buddy Cody. He's up on these barrels, and they have him strapped into the truck. But still, the truck is driving down the bridge, and they have a full, I believe they call it a Russian arm. Anyway, it's a car that has a crane sort of camera that can come off and flow right in front of you and beside you, and the car is driving. The camera's there. Amazing technology. So the first couple of times he does it, and they're like, all right, so we're going to get some of you up there and we need your face, because you're a face character. That thing's got to, you got to open it up and it becomes crazy. And what are you comfortable with? He said, we can sort of Hollywood it. We can have you sit up there and we'll just kind of rock the truck and sort of piece it together. Or, do you want to drive down the road? I was like, let's go. Are you kidding me? Let's go. And I'm standing up on the back of this truck, and they have these explosives going off behind me. And I'm like, because I can shoot out these like stingers like from my hand as sort of my weapon of choice. And honestly, one of the coolest things I ever got to do, for sure. Oh yeah, there's one of them.
Yeah, the stinger becomes kind of a problem for Hellgrammite at the end of. So I think you appeared in 2 episodes. The first one is I believe the 2nd episode, if I'm correct. Season 1, episode 2, I think is called Stronger Together. And that one, the stinger does Hellgrammite in. If I remember correctly, Hellgrammite sort of accidentally kills himself with the stinger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was unclear in that particular episode, and to give some context, when you first start a brand new show, like there's so much that you have to establish before you get going, that there was a lot. And in fact, we shot episode 2 before we shot episode 1. So that really was the first episode that everybody was kind of coming together. I believe. Oh, after the pilot, I take that back. The pilot was shot the year before, and then this was the first one back. But yeah, so it was a little unclear about if I died, if I was knocked unconscious, what happened. But when I came back, they showed me in the prison, right? The DDO sort of prison, when I'm then sort of get released again. So my theory is that it just stung me enough, but it can't really kill me because it's it's in my own body. And then, I just came to, and they took me to prison, and whatever. It also works if I replicated myself. Like I said, that's what happens in the comics, but I guess it's up to the imagination of people now.
Yeah, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from what I understood about Hellgrammite is that the character you play is the Helgamite species. So
Right.
you could be playing any various number of Hellgrammites within the universe. Is that correct?
Correct.
Or are you
Yeah.
playing the same character?
I think it's part of the same species. I think that's how I interpreted it, for sure.
Okay, I think that's really cool because you could come back at any point in the show.
It was fun when they called me back to be in season 4, and they had moved production to Vancouver. It was such a treat for me to see this beautiful city. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's spectacular. You have?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great right there on that island, and I would take a bike to the north part of the island where they have this old growth forest. But we shot in season 4. We shot it at a carnival, and so they had this carnival, ride set up, and that was a lot of fun. Although it was like 100 degrees in a parking lot, and I'm like, this stuff is. I'm like pretending to be a badass. I don't know if it worked, but.
Yeah, that was it had a lot of pies, if I remember correctly. There was like a pie truck. Yeah, a lot of pies. Yeah, you had a pretty awesome fight with Supergirl in that sequence, scaling Ferris wheels and things like that. Hellgrammite was pretty intense there.
Right. Yeah. When they sent me the script, and I'm kind of reading through, I was like, man, this is a lot of action sequence. This is a lot of fighting. This is going to be crazy. And actually, after doing that show, because it did really stretch me as a stunt performer, as a physical performer, that when I left that show, I was like, I need to do more physical activity to, whether it's dance, whether it's all my super best friends, they're in the flow arts. So I took up poi spinning. I don't know if you know what that is, but if you've ever seen a Hawaiian fire spinner go, that kind of, any object at the end of a tether is poi. So you can do all kind of tricks, but, just learning to get in my body, I don't think I ever would have done if I wasn't sort of pushed to my limit doing Supergirl. So I really am so thankful for that show.
That's really cool. Well, hopefully you'll get to come back. It seems like Hellgrammite ended up going to jail, to some form of, I assume he's in the DEO, which is the Department of Extra Normal Operations. It's a highly secretive government organization that everyone knows about. Right. So we may see Hellgrammite again, hopefully. So thank you for sharing that with us. Let's see, Eric, are you there? Can you hear me? Let's see, Eric, can you hear me? All right, he may still be having problems. I'm not sure. I can guide us through a little bit of Hellgrammite's comic book history. So he made his first appearance in The Brave and the Bold, number 80 from November 1968, which I didn't realize Hellgrammite was in terms of comics. That's a pretty old character. So I've got his. Let's see if I can pull up his first appearance here. So he actually, Justice, I don't know if you might know, because you might have seen this in your DragonCon comic shopping, but he made his first appearance in a Batman story. Batman, Yeah, so this is his first appearance with Batman and the Creeper. So this is actually Batman's first encounter with the Creeper as well. So this is cool. This is from 1968. He was created by Neil Adams, who is a very, very famous comic book creator and very a legend in Batman mythology as well. And so if you want to see what Hellgrammite looked like in that first appearance, so Dr. Abbott, while we're going through these, if you have any commentary on the way Hellgrammite is drawn, please let us know, because you may have some thoughts about how he's portrayed in the comics.
That's accurate, right? That's pretty.
Right, yeah. Well, I think, insects are usually used for inspiration, I think, for a lot of these kinds of characters, which I think is fantastic. I don't, only when I guess I'm in a mood, I get really nitpicky about, it should be this or that. Because, I mean, they're just meant to be, inspirational. I think it's fantastic. I had no idea that there was a comic book character, modeled after a Hellgrammite. I think that's awesome. I think that's fantastic. That's a lot of people that would never have known what a Hellgrammite was. You have some idea about it. So it's the big mandibles are there. That's probably one of the, and the long body. That's probably the two features that kind of resemble an actual Hellgrammite.
Yeah, and he also appeared in I can make this full screen. He also appeared in some Superman comics. So this is kind of more where I know him from, and probably why the Supergirl writers pulled Hellgrammite in, because he did a little stint in Superman comics as well. So he looks a little similar. His eyes are maybe a little more pronounced in this version when he returns. So we've got some cool Hellgrammite in the shadow looks here. He's kind of going after Lex Luthor a little bit. So yeah, that's him in Action Comics as well. And from what I was able to research about Hellgrammite from the comics, Dr. Abbott, you may find this interesting, is that Hellgrammite, the character, is actually an entomologist named Roderick Rose. So he actually is an entomologist. So you might enjoy that there is a comic book character who's an entomologist.
I did not know that. That's very cool.
Yeah, apparently.
He's a villain, just so you know.
Yes.
He's a villain.
He's what? Oh, villain. That's okay. That's all right. Hey, just to get us in there.
Representation.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, apparently he subjected himself to a mutagenic process that transforms him into a grasshopper-like insectoid. So is that, Dr. Abbott, would that be a good way to describe Hellgrammites? Are they more grasshopper-like? What would you say about that?
Not at all. Not if you're talking about the actual insect. Two different areas of the insect tree, if you will. Hellgrammites are actually more closely related to, for example, butterflies or something like that than they would be to grasshoppers.
Wow.
They're most closely related to things like beetles and lacewings, if you know what they are. But so not orthopteroid at all. No, they don't jump. Also, which is a characteristic of orthopteroids a lot of times.
Yeah, Hellgrammite in the comics, I think, as well as on the show, lots of jumping capabilities, stingers, things like that. And I think scaling walls was another aspect on the show. Lots of scaling walls, jumping really far, not only high but far. So are those the kinds of are there special abilities of real world Hellgrammites that are kind of interesting that you think people might want to know if they're writing a comic book about Hellgrammite?
Well, first and foremost, they're aquatic. They live in the water, so you'd have to move your universe, I guess, to underwater to be factual in that way. They are some of the top predators, invertebrate predators, certainly though in the streams where you find them, and they can put a nasty pinch on you. I mean, I take students out all the time, and I can remember many years ago I had some students out. We were collecting Hellgrammites. I'm always trying to be funny, and yeah, there's one on a rock. Be funny and try to keep them engaged. And so I would have the habit of grabbing lizards and hanging them from my ear. They'll bite a hold of your ear and hang. Well, I did it one time with a Hellgrammite. I actually had it clamp a hold of my ear, and it drew blood. I mean, they have a pretty good bite, and I certainly, if they can get a hold of your skin, your fingers, or whatever, as many fishermen know, because to the lay public, that's probably the biggest group of folks that would know what a Hellgrammite is, because they are used a lot as fishing bait. But they have a huge head capsule with some pretty big mandibles that can definitely break your skin. So in that sense, I mean, it certainly makes, it's a good inspiration for this character.
Yeah, Justice, I don't know about you, but now I want to see Hellgrammite on the show in an underwater situation. That's, I think that.
I'm just gonna text Greg Berlanti.
Got to have some gills. They have gills.
Do they have gills?
Yeah, they have gills. They again live underwater for 1 to 3 years, depending upon the species. And then the adult, when they come out, they pupate out of the water. That is for a relatively short period of time, and then they are, as an adult, for only about a week. They're actually very short-lived as an adult, and they basically look like the larvae, except that they've got wings. That's they've grown the wings.
So they do fly?
They do.
Yeah,
they do. In fact, Rebecca, I've even got shots here of them in flight. If let me see here.
Ooh.
So this is a male on the left and a female on the right flying. The male has the big sickle-shaped mandibles. They do not prey on anything as adults. The male uses those big mandibles to actually grab a hold of the female while mating. But they don't live for very long. They don't feed. All the feeding is done as larvae.
Really? So they don't eat as an adult?
That's right. Which is not uncommon amongst insects.
In a week.
You say that again?
That's why they die in a week.
Oh, exactly. No, that's exactly right. That's not uncommon with insects. They, basically are growing in order to just reproduce. So, the larvae is typically the longer lived stage, getting the nutrients. This is across, again, lots of different kinds of insects. And then the adults, the primary thing is just for them to reproduce, to move around, to disperse if they can, and then kind of third, if they are going to live long enough in terms of their life history, then they'll have the ability to feed. But lots of things don't eat as adults, actually.
Really? It's just insects in general, or animals?
Insects in general. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but insects in general, that's the case.
Okay. Wow.
This is a larva, an actual Hellgrammite. So they do a pretty good job on the mandibles, from what I could tell there, and the antennae and everything. But those little hairy, I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor, but these are the gills. In fact, let's see. I think here's the underside, and these are the gills that they use to respire in the water.
That's really cool. So what are they eating at this stage?
They will feed on anything from other insects to small fish like minnows to tadpoles, anything basically that they can get a hold of, including vertebrates, they will feed on.
And Dr. Abbott, they're also known as Dobson flies. I had questions about that because I was confused when I was trying to look up Hellgrammites. I kept running into Dobson flies. So what is the difference there?
Dobson fly is the name of the adult. So those pictures of the adults, those are Dobson flies, and basically that refers to members of the genus Corydalis. There are other genera in the family that are called fish flies, or typically a little bit smaller. But the Dobson fly name refers to the adults, and the Hellgrammite is just the larva of the Dobson fly.
Got it.
Yeah, I think what's cool about the pictures of the Dobson fly with the wings and all of that. So how? I guess my question is, sorry for my ignorance. I have so many questions. But so where do the wings come into play? Because like if you were to go to a stream, it doesn't look like, if you found them on a rock, that it looks like they have wings. So when does that come into play?
That's why they're more closely related to a beetle or a butterfly than to a grasshopper. So grasshoppers develop with external wing pads. So you've probably seen before, juvenile grasshoppers, but with wings. They're just not fully developed. In things that have complete metamorphosis, like Dobson flies, the wings actually develop in the pupal stage, And actually, you can see that. Let me flip back here. I've got a picture of that too. So this is the pupa, and you can see, so it came out of the water, basically looks like the larva, except that it's got these wings now that are starting to develop, and it actually has functioning mandibles. So it's in this pupal stage that these wings develop, and then the adult emerges out of that pupa just like a butterfly would out of the chrysalis, basically. I know they may not look super similar, but it's actually quite similar in that way.
So where would you put, let's see, I'm going to bring up this version of Hellgrammite. So where would you put Hellgrammite in the comics? What stage of development is he in?
I would say that a juvenile, a baby. Sorry, Justice. I don't know if that's offensive, but
I have a baby face. That's probably
you're a baby villain. Yeah, I mean, Hellgrammite, the name, and then also the appearance of it. I mean, I'm not quite sure. This is the leg, right? This is the hind leg here. Yeah, so I would call that, yeah, a juvenile or larva Dobson fly.
So I'm very curious if Hellgrammite in the comics would ever develop the wings. I don't know if I've ever seen him in the comics looking like that, but I think that would be really, really cool.
Metamorphosis,
yeah,
which has certainly been in comic books, right? The idea of metamorphosis. So, yeah, another thing to contact the writers about.
I mean, I'm sure I like what you said earlier about just appreciating the fact that these artists finding inspiration from life, right? Because most of us are not going to get down and in the river and hunt these bugs or whatever, but when you get up close, they are pretty wild. Really alien looking.
Absolutely. No, I mean, insects are fascinating, and they impact every part of our world, even for those people that are scared of insects. I mean, and so I think it's great that that insects act as inspiration and all sorts of different kinds of media and things. Unless they're trying to be realistic, I usually don't take issue with it. Sometimes you'll have something like CSI episode where they'll have the wrong kind of beetle crawling on a corpse. I might take an issue of that because they're trying to be factual, right? But if it's inspirational type, emphasis, I mean, I think that's great. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, there's been a lot of insects in DC Comics as well, and Hellgrammite's one of the big ones. So I'm glad you can see past the maybe sometimes mistakes that if the comic book creators have made any. Let's see if we get Eric back. Eric, are you there? No, he's working on some internet issues he's got going on, so it sounds like he still can't hear us. Oh no, Eric, are you there? All right, I guess not. We'll keep trying with Eric. We'll see if we can get him on get him on here. I think he's having some trouble with his internet, but this is live. That happens sometimes with these live streams. So as a reminder, this is live, and if you're watching right now and you have any questions for Dr. Abbott about entomology or about real world Helgamites, feel free to drop them in the comment section. If you have any questions for Justice Leak about his Hellgrammite on the show and anything about his acting career, feel free to let us know. Donna says there's a Hellgrammite on her porch right now. So is that common, Dr. Abbott? I only know them from streams and water and things like that. Do they sometimes get up out of the water?
Version, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm guessing she means a Dobson fly, the adult.
Oh,
what happens is they're attracted to lights. So they will come to porch lights, or I occasionally will, get somebody that says, "Oh, I found the most amazing insect. I've never seen it before," at a gas station light or something like that. So she's probably talking about the Dobson fly adult. And yeah, they fly at night. And so most people don't see them. But if you're looking around a light where they could be attracted, then certainly they can show up. I had a large male with those big mandibles just a couple of weeks ago at our place. You need to be somewhat near a stream where they're developing as a larvae, because they don't fly that far.
Man, this makes me wonder if what I saw all these years ago was a Dobson fly. I was in Guatemala in this little village, and yeah, we were close to a stream. Of course, there's just water everywhere. It rained every day.
Yeah.
I remember one night, this nasty looking thing that had mandibles and was flying. I'd never seen one in the States, but I was like, oh my God, get that thing.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
I bet it was. They certainly are found in the tropics, and so and in some cases can be more abundant there. Even I suspect it was. Who would have known that you would go to play that character down the road?
Maybe he bit me and I became him. I don't know.
There you go.
Very fitting. Dr. Abbott, I was curious. Do you remember your first encounter with a Hellgrammite?
Probably not specifically. I mean, it was probably when I was an undergraduate working in an aquatic entomology lab, and we would collect in streams all the time. And I suppose that's probably where I first encountered them. They're one of those things, while most people probably are not that familiar with them, they're not uncommon. If you know where to find them, how to find them, you can easily run into them, or go out and locate them. So I don't remember my specific or the very first time I ever saw one. I've seen many all over the North and South America, actually, but I don't remember the specific first time.
Yeah, it's actually funny for me personally with the Supergirl TV series. When it first started coming on, we heard that Hellgrammite was going to be appearing. I think that was my first time knowing that such a thing as a Hellgrammite existed. I didn't really even know. I knew he existed in the comics after that, but then I didn't realize that Hellgrammites were real insects. So just recently, in the last couple of years, it was when I first encountered a Hellgrammite. So at least the show, taught me something about insects. So I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, fishermen would be using them as fishing bait would be the people that would be most familiar with them outside of the entomology world. I would say they're pretty commonly used in that way because it's just a big grub, quote unquote, kind of thing that they can use for that. And again, relatively easy to find.
Yeah, Helgamiite on the show is a pretty vicious character when he wants to be. And Justice, I was curious, we never got a backstory for him. Typically on the Supergirl TV series, the villains get some sort of backstory. We get to kind of know what made them go bad, but we never got anything for Helgamiite. Did you ever sort of write something in your head as to what his deal was?
Again, sort of what was explained to me, because I had the same sort of questions when I was offered the role and we started to talk about it. And they decided to go this route of, it's more like a species, it's from a planet, that kind of thing. So for me, it was just very primal is the way I would put it, right? His instincts and what he goes for, or what he's drawn to is primal, which was a nice change in season 4, when I guess I killed one of your characters that you liked. I'm sorry.
I'm still a little bitter about it. I'm gonna get over it. But Mercy Graves was the best, and I was very upset when she was killed. But it's a good scene. But I do wish Mercy Graves had got to stick around. But yeah, he had a story with them. With Mercy and her brother Otis.
Otis, right? Yeah. What was that?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it was just I loved working with all those guys, and now I'm forgetting the actress's name who played Mercy, but
Rona Mitra, I believe.
Yes, Rona. Yeah, fantastic, so lovely. I mean, and she could turn it on in just like a second. She's got that voice, that presence. I know why you like her. I get it.
Yeah, she and Mercy and Otis were sort of using Hellgrammite as a little bit of he considered himself to be in chains somewhat. He wanted to break free from their control. So in that way, I found Hellgrammite to be a little bit more of a sympathetic character
Right.
in that appearance.
I agree. It was nice to have, you know, a little bit of an arc, some growth, you know.
Yeah, he was always a pretty smart character. I thought he knew in that first appearance to beware of the people with the S's on their chest. He knew not to mess with them. So he did seem to have a little bit of an adaptability to realize what was in his circumstances and what not to do and what he could do and that kind of thing. And that makes me think of a question for you, Dr. Abbott. I know insects sometimes have smaller brains and things like that, but are they smart insects? Do they have any kind of an adaptability? Real world Hellgamites, is there are there behaviors that you want people to know about with them?
Well, I guess I can't speak too much specifically to Hellgamites, but in general with insects, they actually have 3 different brains, but they're just basically ganglia, of nerves that have different. They control different parts, different things about the insect. Certainly, they can, they react to stimuli. We raise a lot of insects both for research and outreach purposes, and I mean, you could even say that there's a bit of personality that comes along sometimes with them. So some individuals of a species might be a little bit better or easier to hold, less aggressive than others, things like that. Again, with Hellgamites, because they're underwater most of the, as larvae most of the time, as adults, you can't keep them around for very long. I mean, as adults, they pretty much just sit there during the day, and then they're just active at night. They will certainly pinch you, responding to being grabbed by, something large. I mean, they will certainly, I've had my, blood drawn numerous times actually by both adults and larvae over the years, just out of carelessness or showing students that in fact they will draw blood. And
That's how you got your ear pierced.
Exactly. Well, my joke used to always be my parents would never let me pierce my ears, so here's what I had to do as a kid. I hit my ear. So
sure, they appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm learning that I'm trying to be more bug friendly, more insect friendly, and I guess my common perception was that all insects could be dangerous, especially if they looked scary. But what I'm finding is a lot of times, and this may be more of a generalization, but of course you have to be careful anytime you're near anything. But it seems like insects are more wanting to attack you if they're attacked. Like they'll respond to threats, but they're not necessarily going out there and threatening everyone. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the vast majority of insects are actually not harmful, but they're beneficial. I mean, they benefit us. If we did not have insects, we would not exist. I mean, that's how beneficial they are. Obviously, there's some that are, the ones that cause the biggest problems are actually those that vector diseases, like mosquitoes. Right. The occasional person that gets stung by a bee or wasp or something like that. I mean, that's obviously not fun for the individual, but as things go, unless you're really allergic to them, that's really no big deal. But in general, yeah, I mean, an insect, I don't really aren't any insects that would aggressively come after you. You have things like army ants that move through in waves in the tropics, but again, unless you're standing in their path, they're not going to be a problem. Things like honeybees, the Africanized honeybees, they're responding to vibrations and noise and things as a disturbance. So it is a response, kind of behavior. But yeah, most insects are, even those that are capable of stinging, are they're not aggressive. Most of them.
I can't remember if it's ants or not, but I was watching some documentary about these. I want to say they referred to them as like zombie ants, but
yeah,
they would infect them with something, and then their body would move on and infect other people. How does that? What am I talking about?
Yeah, so you're probably thinking about like there's phorid flies. There's a fly that will actually parasitize the ant, and the larvae will go into eat out the brain and the head capsule of the ant, and can control its behavior to some degree. There are some different examples like that. Yeah.
That's
So
wild.
even insects, I mean, in fact, uh, it's oftentimes said that beetles are the most diverse group of insects out there, but people that study wasps and bees, the Hymenoptera, often push back on that because they argue that for every species of insect, there's probably at least one parasite or parasitoid that's attacking them. So insects will attack insects. There's plenty of examples out there like that.
Wow.
That is wild. Let's see. We got a comment that says Hellgramites have a strong bite. I once saw one bite the cheek of a fish, and the fish was not happy about it. That is pretty wild. So I guess they do interact with other things that are in the water.
Oh yeah, I mean they'll feed on against minnows, tadpoles, other insects that they can get a hold of. They're pretty voracious predators. Among the top invertebrate predators in a stream. I mean, dragonfly larvae would be right up there with them, but those two things would easily be the top invertebrate predators in a stream.
And Dr. Abbott, where are Hellgramites found? Are they found everywhere, or are they found in certain specific spots?
So they typically are found in the margins of fast flowing streams. You're looking for something that's permanent water. That's because again they've got to be there for 1 to 3 years, depending upon the species. So permanent water, fast flowing, but you'll oftentimes find them under the rocks or at the edges of the streams. Although you can find them right in the middle as well sometimes. There are species of fish fly, which is a related genus, that have larvae that look very, very similar. But as far as I know, the term Hellgrammite is really specific to Dobson flies. But these fish fly larvae can live out, in damp situations where they tend to live in more ephemeral habitats. But Hellgrammites typically in permanent flowing, rivers types of situations.
What continents? Obviously, North America, South America.
Yes, those are the for sure the big ones. I have to be honest, I've never seen. I'm trying to think if certainly the family would be found. So I'm sure they're found in the old world as well, in Africa, Asia. I've never seen them in Africa myself, but I'm sure they're there actually. But certainly very common in the northern and southern hemispheres or North and South America is what I mean. Cool. I don't think they're restricted to to the Western Hemisphere. I have to look that up. I'm actually not sure. I've never seen them outside of that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, if you're interested in Hellgrammites and seeing how you can maybe spot them, there is a video that we put out this morning at 10 a.m. About going bugging with Allie Sorley and Todd Hester, and they actually found the Hellgrammite. They actually found this Hellgrammite while they were going bugging. So those are located in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. You can find them in a stream. So you can definitely go and check them out and see. And they found it on a rock, just as we talked about. So they are locally based in Alabama if you want to go look for them. Let's try Eric one more time and see if we can get him on here. So let's see. Eric, you there?
Hey, Rebecca.
Hey, there we go. We got you. We don't have your video, but we'll take audio. So Eric, I was curious about your experience in reading Hellgrammite in the comics. What are your thoughts about him as a character in the comics?
Well, definitely, I've been listening to you all talk about this character, and he's completely different from how he is in the comics to what he is on Supergirl. In the comic books, he's a scientist who's very brilliant. And he decides to go under this mutation and so forth to evolve to become Hellgrammite. And he uses his powers instead of for good. He becomes a villain who's almost working like for the mob of Intergang, who becomes an assassin. And at first, it's funny when he first appears, he attacks the Creeper and Batman, but then he shifts his focus all to becoming part of one of Superman's rogues, villains, and so forth. So he has a very complex way of using his powers and so forth. He's a character that I feel that if they push more can be very troublesome. But he's always been like in the background character, so forth.
Yeah, he seems to be somewhat of a minor character in the comics, but he's still a character that's very visually interesting. So, what do you think about his design?
Oh, it's very menacing. He's with his exoskeleton, he has he's very strong. He has super strength, and just how he looks, it brings, it definitely, it's not for the faint of heart and so forth, I'll say. And he's very menacing, and he's not, well, I'll say he's not easy on the eyes, but he's something, all right, I'll say.
So what, Eric? What did you think about seeing our guest here at Justice League? What did you like about seeing him come to life on the show? I mean, since he is sort of a character that most people don't know in the comics, what as a comic book fan, what was it like to see him be brought to life?
It's a beautiful thing. I grew up in it, like when I was grew up where you only dreamed about seeing characters on shows or movie theaters and so forth, but to have a character that's rarely used in the books, but to see him out actually on the TV show, it's like, okay, it makes you want to learn more about these characters that are not the bigger named household names, and to see him in action and so forth, it makes you want to say, what, hold on, I want to know more about this character. What other issues are he in? What's his background and so forth. And so it pulls at your heart as a fan of comic books. It's like, okay, who he is and who he's attached to. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, even though I was upset that Hellgrammite killed Mercy Graves, what a cool thing as a comic book fan to see Hellgrammite in a scene with Mercy Graves. That's still and Supergirl. I mean, that's so awesome. So even though Mercy Graves died and it was very upsetting, I thought it was really cool that even something like that exists. That those characters can be brought to life. They can literally jump off the page as Hellgrammite does and be brought to life. So that's really cool. So if somebody did want to get into reading Hellgrammite stories in the comics, Eric, where would you point them to?
Well, I would tell them, definitely they can look up either the back issues of Brave and Bold. It's issue 80. That's where he first appeared. They can look up different Superman titles that has had Hellgamite in. He's predominantly a lot in Superman books and so forth. And definitely know that he's also, if they want to see him in a brief appearance, they can look him up in Justice League Unlimited. He was part of Legion of Doom in one of the later seasons of Justice League Unlimited. So he's been around for a little bit. You just gotta keep your eyes peeled for him.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. I guess I didn't realize he was on JLU. If anybody wants to see more about the DC universe, Justice League Unlimited is a fan favorite. It's hugely popular. It's one of the greatest, in my opinion, depictions of the DC universe. Yes. It's just so good. So that's really cool that Hellgrammite is also makes an appearance on JLU. So I will definitely have to go back and rewatch that. Justice. What would you like to leave people with in terms of the Hellgrammite character or your time on Supergirl?
Well, I guess like I said before, I was so honored to really be a part of it. David Rappaport did the casting in LA, and he had really been a supporter of my career and worked to get me on the show, and to have such an interesting role that had not really been explored in live action form was a real treat for me. And like I said, those action sequences and on the back of trucks and jumping off of stuff, it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. When I had one of my first scenes with Laura Benanti, who played Astra, you know, and we're having this dialogue under this bridge at night in Los Angeles, and she's, you know, she's talking to me about these characters, about, you know, Supergirl and stuff like that. That when it was on her cover, I couldn't help but think, I was like, wow, this is it. This is what it feels like to be, you know, in a universe as rich and big as has become so popular in you know, in this country and around the world. So for me, it was a really great experience.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of Supergirl fans, thank you for what you've done as Hellgrammite, and we hope that you come back. Hopefully you'll get another chance to appear on the show and kill off another one of my favorite characters. I'm sure that'll happen. But I'm just giving you a hard time. It's fine. I love Hellgrammite. But thank you for what you have done to bring that character to life and do it in such a really cool way, and for, you know, taking the time to do all those stunts and be part of that universe. We really appreciate it. And so if somebody wanted to see more about your work, do you have any projects coming up? Is there anything you want to point people to go check out more of your stuff?
Sure. I did 3 things last year that should be coming out this year. One is it's called For All Mankind on Apple. It's a sort of an alternate universe about the space program if the Russians had beat us to the moon, and the space race continued, because, you know, then we got to keep going. So it's by the 1980s, which is what season 2 is. We've had all these new missions that are sort of mixed in with the actual missions from the 60s, and they recreated the you know, mission control, and just, you know, walking through that. It's a really, really cool show. And so that'll be coming out at some point this year. I just did my audio for it. And actually did it over my phone, because they're not bringing us into studios to record voices, and, you know, this technology is not too bad anymore. And the one I'm really, really, really excited about, I got to work with the director of Moonlight, Barry Jenkins. He is doing a series for Amazon called The Underground Railroad, which is not the Underground Railroad that we have heard before. It's actually sort of a reimagined version based on a novel that just came to life in a very beautiful. It is dark. It's not good in that sense, but the collection of artists that Barry brought together on this project is amazing. I mean, and I think people are really going to respond really powerfully to it. So, and I was happy to be a part of it. I think that's coming out this fall. But yeah, feel free to if you find me on Instagram on just Justice Leak, I'll be posting about it there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that gives me some more things to add to my queue to watch. So that's great. Well, thank you for joining us today. And Dr. Abbott, what would you like to leave people with in terms of real world Hellgamites? What would you want to tell them?
Just maybe that it's a great example of the wondrous world of insects, that there's so much out there to discover. I mean, again, most people probably don't know what a Hellgrammite, or didn't before this know what a Hellgrammite was, and maybe now a bit more interested or fascinated in them. And there's just lots and lots of examples of like that exist out there, for sure. I mean, I've been studying insects for, you know, decades, and I'm still discovering new things constantly. That's one of the things that really excites me about them. And I was thinking about Justice's question, where are Helgamites found? You know, I guess if we describe the Hellgrammite as the larva of the genus Corydalis, that is only Dobson flies, and I think they are just in North and South America. Okay. But you have members of that family that are found, you know, across the world, but I don't know that they're necessarily, the larvae of them is necessarily called Hellgrammite. So that's the as I was sitting here and thinking about a little bit more detailed answer to your question.
You're like, I actually do know this answer, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you all for spending time with me today to talk about real world Hellgramites and teaching me about those, because now I want to learn more. And thank you to Eric and Justice for talking about the fictional Hellgramite from DC Comics and for sharing part of your knowledge and experience about that. I guess we're going to have to wrap this up, but thank you for joining us for Bama Bug Fest on the web today. Content like this always appears at 10, 2, and 4 with the daily wrap up at 7 p.m. And all these times are Central Standard Time. So if you're living in a different time zone, just be aware of that. If you weren't able to join us in the live presentation as it happens, like we're doing right now, you can always go back and watch them later. We've got archived videos on both the Facebook pages of the Alabama Museum of Natural History, the Mildred Westervelt Warner Transportation Museum, and the Tuscaloosa Public Library. But we also have them also on the YouTube channels, youtube.com/UA Museums, as well as the Tuscaloosa Public Library YouTube channel. So you can go and always go back to anything you missed and go see them there. For a full schedule of events and everything that we've got going on with Bama Bug Fest on the web, which is a great pun, and I love it so much. You can go to bamabugfest.org. That'll show you all of the events that we have coming up, so you can go and check those out. And let's see. So as always, just want to thank all of our collaborating partners who made this event happen. And thank you to our guests today for helping us out and teaching us more about Hellgramites and shared a little bit of your time and expertise with us. All right. We'll see everybody next time on Bama Bug Fest on the web. Hope everybody has a great rest of your afternoon.
See you guys.
See you.
Bye-bye.